What's up everyone? Welcome back to another Weather with Ryan forecasting video. We have a lot to discuss in this weather forecast, such as this big time storm system moving through the central portions of the United States and the long-term pattern and what that means for our secondary severe weather season. Let's get straight into it. So I want to show off the base reflectivity for the European. I don't normally like to look at the base reflectivity because I just don't really care for looking at it that much. But I want to take it out to this big-time storm system moving into the central portions of the United States on around Friday into Saturday. So as you can tell on around Friday, around 18Z, you can start to see some convection with this trough moving through the United States. It's going to eject into the United States around Friday or Saturday over the Rocky Mountains, and this is going to bring a threat for some severe weather for the central portions of the United States. Large hail, damaging winds, and tornadoes are all on the table. And as we progress this to around Saturday into Sunday, you could start to see this big time ejection from this big time storm system, this low pressure 1,002 millibars over in the central portions of the United States, general broad convection over the central portions of the United States. And this starts to move eastward, but you could start to see this classic low pressure system, this look with this little hook. And the main threat for severe weather would be on the southern end. This is where the main supercells and the tornadic activity would be. This happens always with low pressure systems. Anything on the southern end is normally where you'd find severe weather. I mean, you could find severe weather throughout this whole line of thunderstorms. But the main ones for tornadic activity are on the southern end. So if you live over in, Oklahoma, Missouri, the Panhandle of Texas, anywhere over in the southern plains, you guys should be weather aware for the storm system moving through the central portions of the United States. So let's go over on what is causing this big time weather event and how it's going to unfold. So right now we're looking at the 500 millibar maps, which is the jet stream. And as we progress this to on Thursday and Friday, you can see this big time dipping down trough over California. This is going to progressively move eastward over the southern plains, as I mentioned before. As we progress this to around Saturday and Sunday, this big time trough, this low pressure system, starts to eject over the Rocky Mountains, and this is going to be the sufficient flow for this big time weather event moving into the central plains. Into Saturday around 18Z and to Sunday early morning on Sunday, you can see this defined low pressure system, and this is going to bring a broad area of 500 millibar flow, upper level flow for severe weather. And as you progress it to around Sunday, it starts to kind of die off with the low pressure system centered over the upper portions of the northern United States, and that's going to progressively move east. But yeah, so if you live over in the central plains, you guys need to be weather aware. As I've said before, this low pressure system starts to eject around late Saturday, and that's whenever we're going to have our risk for severe weather in the central plains. All right, I want to shift our attention to the 850 millibar maps, which is wind shear. This is winds 1,000 feet above your head. So as we progress it out on around Friday, there's not that much low-level winds going on over in the central portions of the United States. But as we progress into Saturday, there's going to be some very, very enhancement of this low-level winds, and this is with association with that ejection into the central plains with that trough. And as you can tell, there is very, very adequately and strong wind shear over the central plains in excess of around 50, around 50, 60 knots of wind shear. That's pretty modest wind shear, I'd say. But and this likes to stay around into the day into Saturday. So it looks like the Saturday could be the main show, the main event for the central plains. Obviously, there is pretty modest wind shear for some synoptic flow and some turning with winds as we go up into the heights. Obviously primarily conducive for tornado development. But we have around 45, 50 knots of wind shear over in over in central Oklahoma. Over in, 45, 50 knots of wind shear, basically, over in the central plains. So if we're in the central plains, there is low-level winds adequately available for rotating storms and the conduciveness for tornado development. This low pressure system is also going to bring a lot of moisture from the Gulf of Mexico. Whenever low pressure systems come into the United States, they like to suck up a lot of moisture from the Gulf of Mexico, and that obviously gets a little bit more humid and a little bit more muggy. So around Thursday, you could already see there's a lot of moisture being sucked back up into Texas, Oklahoma, all throughout the southern plains. And as we progress this to around Friday, look at this, it's even more expansive with upper 60 dew points over in the central plains. This is obviously good amount of moisture for storm development. And as we progress into around Saturday and to Sunday, obviously there is still a lot of moisture. Look at this. That is a massive pull of 60 dew points, around 60, 65 dew points. That is more than adequate for thunderstorm development in the central plains. And look at this. It starts to stretch as far as over in Illinois and into western Kentucky. So we have around 60 dew points, which is going to feel a little bit more muggy than it has been recently. Obviously, it's been very nice and cool out. And it's going to be returning to a little bit more of a humid air mass. But with that humid air mass, that's also going to bring the threat for some severe thunderstorms to develop. As we progress this to around Monday into Tuesday, that broadened moisture is moving over into the Ohio Valley, moving eastward. So obviously, if you live over in the Ohio Valley, over in Kentucky, Illinois, Indiana, Tennessee, Mississippi, you guys are going to get where we over here. I live in the Ohio Valley, over in Kentucky, so we are going to get more humid dew points, humid air from the Gulf of Mexico, and of course it likes to linger around Tuesday into Wednesday. All right, I want to go ahead and take a look at the instability levels and see what this storm system has to work with in terms of instability. We're looking at surface-based CAPE, and as it progresses to around Thursday and Friday, you can start to see some intensification of CAPE values. This is around Thursday, around noontime, over in Oklahoma, central Oklahoma, around 27,000 joules per kilogram. That's pretty good CAPE values, instability values over in that area for this time of year. As you progress into Saturday, around Saturday, as you can tell, there's not as big of an area for instability and CAPE, but there is still adequate CAPE over in the central plains, around 26,000, 30,000 joules per kilogram, and around 13 to 15,000 joules per kilogram. Just anywhere over in this highlighted area, you guys are going to be having some greater instability values with this storm system. Obviously, more instability, the more volatile the storms can be, and the more conducive the storms can be for severe development. So just anywhere in the central plains next into Saturday, into Friday, obviously we have a threat for the possibility of some severe storms. And as you progress out into next week, obviously there's not that much in terms of going on with CAPE, even though that low pressure system is still hanging out over in the northern portions of the United States. This is going to kind of be like a one and done deal with this big time storm system, but we will just have to see, and we'll be having to keep our eyes out for any other storm systems that like to come into the central portions of the United States and like to get in our hair in the United States. All right, before we end this forecasting video, I just want to go over the long-range pattern and see what we have to look at for the next week and a half in terms of storm systems moving through the United States. So as I said before, around Friday, obviously on Friday, we're having that low-pressure system causing severe weather over in the central plains. That is pretty much a given at this point. And the GFS is a little bit different in terms of the progression of this storm system. It doesn't really eject it until later in the Saturday, but the European is a little bit more faster, but a little bit more weaker. And as we progress into around Monday, obviously we still have some remnants of that low pressure system over in the Great Lakes region that is going to bring in some cooler temperatures, even though the dew points are going to be modestly up there. And as we progress it to around Wednesday into Thursday of next week, this is whenever the models start to not know what they're talking about. It looks like we could have a return of a little bit of some ridging over in the United States with that high pressure system. Maybe that could be a possibility. But right now I'm not really seeing much that we could really shout out besides this being on the 3rd of October. I highly doubt this is going to, look at that. I highly doubt that's going to happen. That would be insane. Yeah, that ain't going to happen. But overall, in terms of the long-range pattern, there's nothing really to be screaming about in terms of severe weather and big-time weather patterns moving through the United States. It looks like this big time weather pattern that's moving through in the latter half of this week into this upcoming weekend. Looks like this is going to be the one to talk about for a bit. And then as we progress into the latter half of later into next week, into next weekend, there's not really going to be that much, and it is still way too far out to determine any severe risk. But yeah, there's not really much going on in terms of weather into the later portions of September. We just have to focus on this big-time storm system moving through the central portions of the United States in this near future in the latter half of this week. If you guys enjoyed this weather forecast, make sure to hit the subscribe button, turn the notification bell to stay in the loop for any weather information. I'll see you guys in the next weather forecasting video.